Sup geeks, welcome back! Mars, the red planet, our mysterious neighbor full of enigmas. People have been fascinated with Mars for centuries. This doll is going to be inspired by this planet. It is said that once Mars was just like Earth, full of life. Maybe there were people there, intelligent life forms, an ancient civilization perhaps. I want to create a doll and imagine how a princess of Mars would have been. The first step was to create my concept art, and here's the design I came up with. I took so many inspirations to create this look, but I'm going to talk about them later while repainting her. I mean, we need something interesting to talk about and not just me describing what I'm doing. Also, this video is in collaboration with other 8 fellow YouTubers. Each one of us created a doll representing a planet of the solar system, so be sure to visit the aliens of Blank Space Dolls Mercury, Valkittys World Venus, Dolls Mills Earth, Enchanterium Jupiter, Sélène Saturn, HisNameIsAkin Uranus, Kyros Workshop Neptune, and OOAK Kyros Pluto. This time our victim is going to be a Frankenstein doll that was in a really bad condition, but I love Frankie's face bone construction and we're going to completely repaint her skin, so it's time for some modding first. Yeah, as you saw in my concept, this Martian princess is so tall, so thin, almost ethereal, and for that I need to elongate her torso, neck and limbs. I mark all the places where I have to make a cut and I'm going to use my Dremel-like tool to make the process easier for me. My inspiration for this super stylized silhouette comes from 2 movies, Artificial Intelligence and Mission to Mars. Both of these movies depict these tall and thin extraterrestrial beings and they look so beautiful and literally otherworldly. I'm glad both designers walk away from the grey alien or the xenomorph monster type cliché. Once I'm done with the creepy doll dismembering part, I'm ready to reassemble her, and the process is going to be quite easy. I'm just going to use wire to elongate each limb, but first, with the same wire, I'm going to heat it up to pierce the solid parts. Also, be sure to mark all the different limbs first because things can get really messy, believe me. Now that I'm done with piercing all the solid parts from the legs and the arms, let's start joining them. And there is no science here. I'm just gonna use some wire as the new bond and hot glue to bond everything. Yeah, never underestimate the power of hot glue. It's really strong enough to hold everything together until we start the sculpting work. Now, for the hollow parts, I'm also using hot glue to fill them up. I'm doing this mostly because we need a surface to stick the wire. And hot glue is easy to use, cheap, strong and soft at the same time. So sticking the hot wire on it's gonna be really easy. Just make sure to handle everything carefully so you don't get burned. The lower part of her body is done. I'm liking how it's looking right now, so I think I made the right choice. So all I need to do is repeat the same process from the waist up. And here she is. No more loose limbs all over my work table. She's holding up really well, so it's time to use some epoxy. This part of the process is so satisfying because we get to cover all the visible skeleton areas and she's starting to look so much better. Just make sure to smooth the epoxy surface using some water. This is going to make the sanding process so much easier. And it's the next day. The epoxy sculpt is like solid hard plastic now, and oh my gosh, she looks so great. I'm really loving her new proportions, but it's time for what I hate the most. Sanding. I can skip it in real life, but I can make it here thanks to the magic of the edition. Just make sure to make all the transitions as seamless as possible. Let's say goodbye to her human ears using an X-Acto knife, because they won't be visible after all. I'm going to try and make an elongated skull. First, I'm using some aluminum foil to save some epoxy and to avoid her head of being too heavy. This kind of alteration was considered a symbol of elegance, beauty and divinity in so many ancient cultures. Maybe they got the reference from visitors they saw coming down from the stars? Maybe they considered them as gods and wanted to look like them somehow? I know, too many questions. And this is starting to sound like an Ancient Aliens episode. But honestly, she's starting to look so much elegant right now. Somehow the long head is sealing the deal and matching her new proportions. Once done and sanded, let's get prepared to the painting process. I'm using Sharpie permanent markers to resolve one of the greatest nightmares in the doll customizing community: the painting chipping off the joints. I'm taking advantage of this doll having mostly black and red skin, and I'm dyeing the joints first using the markers. This will prevent her original skin color of being visible when moving the joints. Once done, you can see it for yourselves. It worked perfectly. So now we're done, we're moving on to the acrylics. I don't own an airbrush, but honestly, I don't think I need one at this point. I get so used to change the doll's skin colors using this technique that I have perfected over the years. Just remember that you need to use watercolor brushes. Never use acrylic or mixed media brushes. If you want to make sure the paint looks like the factory skin color with no visible brush strokes, the brush you use is fundamental. I repeat, only use watercolor brushes and apply the paint in thin coats. Also, always wait for the previous coat to dry before applying a new one. I don't design original characters for the channel so much, since you all know I mostly prefer to create video games and anime characters. So I'm feeling a little bit out of my comfort zone right now, but despite of all the modding I made, I still wanted to keep everything simple. Also, I wanted this time to create a doll 100% accurate to my original design. I just wanted to avoid using fabrics on her. For some reason, I thought that covering our own bodies using fabrics is something so human, and I wanted to stay away from that feeling. I know we started covering ourselves to protect our mostly hairless bodies from low temperatures in ancient times, and clothing became an artistic expression. It's such a part of us that without them we feel exposed and literally naked. And that got me thinking about the question, why do we feel the need to cover certain areas of our bodies? And the major question, would an extraterrestrial civilization feel the same need? Honestly, I don't have the answers. I think nobody does. So I decided to create all these tribal inspired designs all over her body, leaving it to the imagination of each one. Is it a tight bodysuit? Is it her own skin? Believe what you like the most. One of my biggest inspirations from this character is from a Russian science fiction novel named Aelita. Written by Alexei Tolstoy, is the story of a Martian princess that falls in love with a human astronaut. It's kind of sad since the whole story is Shakespearean-like, but it's quite beautiful. The description of the Martian rituals and culture is really interesting, and I love the fact that she always called him the son of sky. While this character is not precisely her, I did get the Martian princess inspiration from that novel. Yeah, I used to be a bookworm back then when I was in high school. And now all the body paint is finally done. I'm quite sure I made the right decision. Oh my gosh, it's looking so good. I can't wait to start the face up, so let's move on to it. The first step for this face up is to make some blushing using soft pastels. I'm going to use a dark one all the way around her face to give her some depth. Then I'm going to use some black for her lips, and then I will switch to a yellow color to highlight the eyes area. I know, it's kinda bold, but the light colors always fade when we seal with MSE. After this, I'm only using brushes and acrylics on this face up. I'm giving her black scleras to keep my color scheme in harmony. And then I'm starting to create some designs on her face. My biggest inspirations for this makeup comes from different African cultures' face paint. They are so beautiful, and while I am not representing any specific culture and I am creating my own fantasy design, all those beautiful paint jobs were truly inspiring while repainting this doll. I gave her beautiful golden irises, and this is why. I have to say that I love Ray Bradbury's literature, especially his classics Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles. I will never forget The Martian Chronicles was the first adult book I read back then when I was in middle school. It's the chronological events about human race colonizing Mars. Really sad because we end up completely erasing the Martian culture and leading the Martians to extinction. I was so fascinated with it. It made me think about the colonization process in the whole American continent. The book is so eerie and bizarre, but beautifully written. But there is a short story Bradbury wrote and he never included inside the Martian Chronicles. It is named Dark They Were and Golden Night. And the name of this story is the second inspiration for this face up, especially for her golden eyes. I'm going to keep adding some more details to her face design, but not too much. One of the more difficult steps on a face-up process is to know where to stop, especially when it is your own design and it is up to you how many details you really want to add. And finally, the face-up is almost done, and oh my gosh, I have to say, I'm really in love with her. So it's time to move on to the final step, the headpiece. For the headpiece, I vaguely took inspiration from some Popovi Sister Dolls wigs. They are truly bizarre, and I've been wanting to create something like that for a while. I was going to use her in the beginning, but then I switched to super light air dry clay because I think the hair was not going to match with this doll aesthetic. Once done the first piece, I'm creating some textures on the surface, and when it is done, I'm going to paint it gold. Finally, I'm going to add 2 clear gems to the headpiece. These gems represent diamonds, which is the gem of Mars in astrology. I'm doing this mainly because it was part of the collaboration's rules. And once they are in place, our Princess of Mars is ready. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to click all the other videos of this Out of This World collab. Drop your comments, request your favorite characters, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. More interesting projects coming up in the next weeks. Until the next time, bye!